Chapter 8, How Not Reading Got Me a PhD. From my experience, a PhD is like training to be a detective in the land of the unknown. You're not given answers, you're handed mysteries. You start with a hunch, a hypothesis, and then test it again and again, like a stubborn chef trying to perfect a recipe without knowing the ingredients. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't. But over time, you stop panicking when things go wrong. You just roll up your sleeves and say, all right, let's figure it out. That's the real gift of a PhD. It teaches you how to think until the process becomes so familiar that it seeps into your subconscious. It becomes part of who you are. When I started my PhD, I used to ask my supervisor, Professor Rudolf Riemersma, what I thought were reasonable questions. At first, he answered, but after a while, he simply said, "Go to the library." He wasn't being unkind. He was encouraging me to find the answers myself. I felt lost. In China, from primary school to university, we had one standard textbook to follow. Everything was clear, structured, and guided. But over time, I began to understand. The British system is different. Around age 14, when teenagers start to rebel, British schools don't try to suppress it. They work with nature. They give students choices. At GCSE level, students pick some of their subjects. By A levels, they choose almost everything. This freedom teaches responsibility and encourages independent thinking. That's why British universities are so strong. They don't just teach facts. They teach students how to question and to create. In China, students excel before university, not because they are more clever, but because the education system is highly structured and disciplined. This helps them top international exams and become academic high achievers. And in the UK, when secondary schools add more structure, like Michaela Community School under Catherine Birbelsing, students also perform incredibly well. So I believe China gives students roots, Britain gives them wings, and when the body starts to crave freedom, that's when the wings begin to grow. People often think you have to be very clever to do a PhD, but I don't believe that. I couldn't even speak English properly when I started. If I could do it, truly anyone can. You just need patience and a willingness to suffer a little. It's not about being smart. It's about learning how to learn. But of course, it wasn't always easy. In fact, near the end, I almost gave up. About 4 months before finishing my experiments, I hit a wall, both scientifically and emotionally. I walked into my second supervisor, Dr. Alexander Unger's office in tears, and told him I wanted to quit. Even if I go back to China, I said, life may still be hard, but at least it won't feel like this. He handed me 2 Seafold rough green hand towels, the only towels available in his office. I remember thinking, only in academia do you sob your heart out and get handed sandpaper for comfort. They weren't soft, but they were real, and so was his kindness. After I stopped speaking, he looked at me calmly and said, "It's okay. Only 4 months left. No TED Talk pep speech, no grand plan, just a quiet reminder that finishing would be less painful than quitting." Somehow, that was enough. I dragged myself across the finish line, partly because only 4 months sounded survivable, even though the thesis still had to be written. That's Dr. Ungar. He didn't try to fix everything or give big speeches, but he always found a quiet, steady way to keep me moving forward. My university had a thoughtful system. Every PhD student had 2 supervisors. If one couldn't give enough support, you could lean on the other. It wasn't about judging you, it was about helping you succeed. In moments like mine, that safety net made all the difference. When I finally finished my experiments, I faced a new challenge, the thesis. The university wanted original thinking, my own ideas, my own voice. But I didn't know what to say. I assumed I hadn't read enough, so I buried myself in papers and books. The more I read, the more confused I became. Then one day I paused and asked myself, what do I have that others don't? Their English was better. They had read something else, real-life experience. I had seen patients. I had performed surgery. That changed everything. I began connecting my clinical work with my research. What if my findings could help real people? Could they guide treatment? Could they shape studies that matter? Not just in journals, but in hospitals? Once I made that shift, ideas came rushing in. I kept a notebook next to my pillow and scribbled down thoughts at all hours. Some nights, I'd wake up at 3 a.m., half asleep, and jot something down. Then I'd fall back asleep like a mad scientist dreaming in data. Eventually, I had more ideas than I could fit into one thesis. That's how I finished writing my thesis, not by reading more or writing faster, but by thinking differently. In the end, I graduated with a brain full of ideas and a heart full of relief. At that point, I didn't feel like a scholar. I felt like a boiled dumpling that had finally floated to the top. Sir Patrick Forrest invited me to stay at his home on the eve of my graduation. Lady Margaret, as always, prepared a wonderful dinner and truly pulled out all the stops. We began celebrating early, and their kindness knew no bounds. I was deeply touched by their warm hospitality. That night, just before I went to bed, Sir Patrick gave me a gentle kiss on the forehead. Tears welled up, and I turned away. No words were needed. We both understood. He had seen me through every struggle and triumph over the years, from the moment I first arrived in Edinburgh barely able to speak English to the day I earned my PhD. His unwavering support had been a constant source of strength. He even served as one of my referees for my PhD application, a true testament to his belief in me and my journey. I remember once going to him for advice when the Home Office questioned the source of my savings. "I've had to be extremely careful with every penny," I told him. "Even this dress I'm wearing, it only cost £3 from a car boot sale in Bristol Square." After our conversation in his office, I was on my way back down the corridor when I heard him step out and call after me. "Dr. Chow, your dress is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." His colleagues looked puzzled. It wasn't like him, and it was just a simple outfit, but his praise was sincere. This kind of kindness has stayed with me ever since, a lasting reminder of the support that helped me along my journey. The next day, I stood in the beautiful McEwen Hall at the University of Edinburgh, holding my graduation certificate and feeling truly grateful. I'm thankful to Britain for the opportunities it gave me and to everyone who supported me along the way, including the Home Office. Every step of my journey here has felt like a gift. That day, as I walked out of McEwen Hall, I wasn't alone. One person was waiting quietly, Charles Scott, a brilliant young Scottish civil engineer. He didn't say much. He simply took my bag and walked beside me down those old stone steps. His quiet presence made me feel safe, understood, and no longer alone. Many years later, I carry his surname Scott with pride. Looking back, what stayed with me the most wasn't the PhD certificate on the wall, but all the quiet moments that carried me through. A £3 car boot sale dress with a heartfelt compliment. 2 pieces of disposable green hand towel that soaked up more than just tears. They carried kindness, encouragement, and a kind of unspoken understanding I'll never forget. Sometimes it's not the title that matters most. It's the hands that lift you when you feel like falling. Those moments reminded me that behind every challenge, there were people who believed in me, often in the gentlest, most unexpected ways. And that made the journey possible. End of chapter 8.